Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Friday night here with Wrestling Royalty and with Gimme Hull. I'm very aware that there's also a couple of other streams going on over on Gimme Hull. And today, I should say happy Friday and also happy International Women's Day. You'll notice there's a lot of content going out today focused on women in wrestling. So currently, if you're watching, you might be watching across on Gimme Hull. And you can see the Anthony's across there, and he's doing a live stream of the, I think it's the Girls of Eve wrestling promotion, and he's doing a live watch along of that. There's also been the My GM from 2K24, which has just dropped. And again, Anth is doing some great work across there. He's doing the My GM mode where it's all of the women's roster, it's just the women's roster and nothing else. And you can see that's an ongoing series. So please feel free to flip across all of the channels, all the videos we've currently got going on. But if you decide to watch it here tonight with myself, I'm really glad that you've decided to spend your Friday evening or day or wherever you are in the world with me. I really do appreciate it. So make sure before we go any further, if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, make sure you click it. Someone that I know has clicked that subscribe button is Mark LFC UK. I'm sure he has. He's always across it on all the Gimme Hull and Wrestling Royalty videos. So really good to see you in, mate. I'm good. How are you? Let me know. How are you doing, mate? Really excited. And there's a lot going on, as Mark says. The video's just gone up. You can watch them back at any time, of course. It's about to end, and Anthony's across there doing the Pro Wrestling Eve as well. So some great content going out across the channel, if we do say so ourselves. So make sure if you're watching that and you've come across this, welcome. And you can watch us in the future, of course, or vice versa. But today on this, what we're going to be starting calling Friday features, or maybe even Friday night features. That's the name of what we're going to be doing, because we like to have a bit of a chat about what's going on in the world of wrestling. And for myself, more than likely is going to be about WWE. We like to sprinkle a bit of TNA, a bit of AEW here and there as well. But tonight, as you can probably see from the title, we are going to be talking about women's matches at WrestleMania and women of WrestleMania. So with that in mind, I've got a question for you. I want to hear in the comments. Let me know in the chat, and I will promise I'll bring it up because it's just me tonight. Sam is still away on his jollies in Centre Parks, I believe. He might be back next week, and normal service will be resumed. But tonight, I want to have a bit of a chat with you. So let me know, what's your favourite women's WrestleMania match? Do you have a favourite? Is there something that you'd love to see? Are you looking forward to this year's? So what the format for this is going to be tonight, I'm going to have a bit of a chat about the two matches that have already been organised for WrestleMania. We'll have a bit of a chat about how we got there, where they're going, what my predictions are, things like that. Again, let me know during the comments. What do you think is going to happen? Are you excited for one and the other? Are you excited for both? Are you excited to see what other matches for the women are going to be arranged this year? And I've also got some trivia for you that I'm going to dot throughout WrestleMania. Trivia, and it's going to be going all the way back to WrestleMania 1 all the way through. So I'll throw a question out there for you, and if you know the answer before I read it out, feel free, shout up, let me know in the comments if you know the answer already. But let me know all the stuff all about WrestleMania and women at WrestleMania. So have you got a favorite match there? Let me throw this up here. And as I said, we're going to be starting things off by talking about the two matches that we've already got, which are a result of both the Royal Rumble and then the Elimination Chamber as well, set us up to where we are. So we're going to have a bit of a chat first about Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch, because we've kind of covered that a little bit more. And then I want to get into Iyo Sky versus Bayley, because I think there's some great work been going on. And I asked in the description of the video, do you feel like Iyo Sky versus Bayley has been a bit undervalued, a bit undercooked in the sense of how they're promoting it? Because there's a lot of people that have been pointing out neither Bayley nor Iyo Sky are actually featuring on any of the WrestleMania posters, which is for me very disappointing, because there's a lot of good work going into storyline. This is a long storyline and a payoff for it as well. So a bit of a shame not to see at least Bayley, who did win the Royal Rumble at the end of the day, not featured a bit more prominently when it comes to advertising for WrestleMania XL. So let me know your thoughts on that. But we are going to start things off with a bit of trivia. I want you to tell me if you do know the answer. I'll leave it hanging for a couple of minutes. I'll quickly try and put it on the ticker as well. I want you to tell me, do you know what the very first women's match was and which WrestleMania it was? If you can get that answer, I'll give it a couple of minutes before I kind of go into it. I've spent a lot of today doing a little bit of research in terms of first matches and longest matches, shortest matches, and how many matches they've actually had and things like that. So it's been interesting because I had a feeling that might be a slight underrepresentation when it comes to women at WrestleMania and the women's matches. And there's obviously a certain point where things seem to pick up a little bit. There's definitely points where it was very undercooked in terms of where there wasn't any matches at all. I'll give you all that trivia so you can take this away, talk about it with your wrestling friends if you haven't already heard these ones before. And I'm sure you'll be, well, probably totally very boring for knowing that. But at the end of the day, knowledge is great. So, yeah, I'm going to ask you, what was the first women's match at WrestleMania? I almost put ATAT, and this is not a Star Wars stream. So, there we go. Let's have that going around. So Mark is in there, and as I said, we're going to be discussing everything about here. I'd have Bayley win so we can have a Mania moment. Becky doesn't need the win. We're going to start with Becky Lynch as soon as we get to the answer here. So Mark's had an opening gambit of, was it Mania 4, Wendy Richter versus Medusa or something? Now, that's not a bad guess. You've got some of the information right there, Mark. I'll give it about 30 more seconds before I reveal the answer. But you have got one of the people in that match absolutely bang on, so well done for that. You're well on your way. While you're doing that, I am just going to start sharing things around to make sure that we've got as many people as we can in tonight, because it's always great when I have people to chat to, and yeah, just it makes these go a lot easier. Makes me feel like I've got a little bit of company as well. So Wendy Richter was the person that you've got correct there, Mark. It actually happened at WrestleMania 1. At Madison Square Gardens. We had Wendy Richter versus Leilani Kai at WrestleMania 1. Now, Wendy Richter on that one was accompanied by someone who a lot of people would say that they want to have in the WWE Hall of Fame and probably deserve it a lot more than other people, especially celebrities they've got in. Wendy Richter was, of course, accompanied to the ring by Cyndi Lauper at WrestleMania 1. So there's your first bit of trivia today, is Wendy Richter versus Leilani Kai was the first ever match at WrestleMania 1, and it lasted for 6 minutes and 14 seconds, which actually, when you go through some of the stats, not a bad effort in terms of how long that match got, because some of them have got a lot less than that, let me tell you. So let's move on. I'm going to start by having a chat about Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch. So there's a lot being said about this one, because it feels like Rhea Ripley is very over. We saw Elimination Chamber. Everything in terms of advertisement was focused on Rhea Ripley. The adverts, the posters, everything. It was very much a homecoming for her. Then we had Becky Lynch, who has never really been too far away from the sort of top spot in the women's roster. But to me, it feels like they've definitely kept these two apart. They've kind of had them, do other things. Rhea was very much a part of the Judgment Day stuff that was going on. And Becky Lynch even had a little bit of a stint down on NXT as well, and then started having some feuds elsewhere. We've seen her most recently against Nia Jax have a bit of back and forward. But there is a little bit of a question as to whether this will remain as a one-on-one match. Now, obviously, Becky earned her way into the match through Elimination Chamber, but recently we've still seen Nia Jax get involved in the matches. We're now seeing Liv Morgan have a sort of back and forward with Becky Lynch. Becky cost Liv the match a couple of weeks ago, and then on Monday night we saw Becky cost the match against Nia Jax when Liv Morgan got involved, so she kind of lost by disqualification. And Liv quite rightly says that she, it's not always about Becky and how does it feel, things like that. So it's very interesting to see whether this will remain as a one-to-one, or are we going to see some sort of switch up, because I do believe, as the slide says, on Monday we are going to have Becky Lynch versus Liv Morgan. Now, Liv is very, very popular over on social media, so she has a big following. So it's going to be an interesting one, because I can see potentially Nia Jax getting involved in this match, which means there's this kind of triangle of superstars that are going after each other. So really odd that we're not seeing more of just a straight Rhea versus Becky. Becky's already kind of veering off into this Liv Morgan, Nia Jax triangle thing that's going on as well. So would you like to see a fatal four-way match between those four? Or is it time that Becky and Rhea just had a chance to go one-on-one and we keep it as that? Mark's mentioned in the comments there, only way I see Liv and or Nia in the match is if Becky isn't taking a break. Let me know a little bit more. What do you mean by that? Because if Liv or Nia is in the match, I would imagine one of them is there to take the pin and make sure that Becky looks strong still. But maybe we'll find a little bit more out on Raw or in the next couple of weeks. But it'd be interesting to see how they will justify Becky winning in the Elimination Chamber seemingly into a one-on-one match. I mean, it was never, I guess, specifically said it would be a one-on-one match, but it was definitely implied that's what would happen. And how do you not make a sort of mess of Liv and Nia getting back in there? So yeah, lots to ponder. But Becky Lynch versus Rhea is a match I've wanted to see quite a while now, purely on the basis that I think at times Becky has been far head and shoulders above the rest of the competition. Now we kind of see a bit of a switch where, like, I don't really see any very good competitors for Rhea. I've said a couple of times, both in private chats and in here as well, I think Rhea doesn't need the belt. I kind of see it, the fact that she is kind of one of those people who doesn't really need it, and she hasn't actually done that much as a champion. And what I mean by that is when you look at it from the perspective that who in the women's roster other than Becky Lynch has really kind of pushed on, who can you think of that Rhea had an amazing match with other than Charlotte? Again, not someone who's had to have the title involved to kind of get into that position. But for me, when the champion's there, their job is to obviously look amazing, retaining their title and having that title reign, but also lifting the rest of the division up. And sometimes you might have to drag them up. But for me, I don't really see where Rhea is kind of like elevated the rest of the roster. And unfortunately, like, maybe it's because she's been too involved with the Judgment Day side of things, and it's kind of like watered down what she should be doing with the women's roster. But for me, there needs to be a little bit of work done between now and WrestleMania to make sure that fans can truly buy into Rhea and Becky being on the same level. Because Becky's not had like loads of wins, but she's still stayed very relevant. And they've kind of gone down the road of Becky saying that I need to prove that I can hang with someone who is probably one of the best that we've ever seen in the division. So yeah, really interesting to see if that is the way that they continue to go, or will we make it a multi-person match? Mark's put a little bit more detail in there. That's what I mean. If you put Nia or Liv in, one of them has to be eating the pin, because why have Becky eat the pin if she isn't taking the room of break? Oh, right. Okay. So if Becky was the one who kind of just took the pin, then you give her a bit of a break. Yeah. Okay. I'm completely with you there. Yes. If it does stay one-to-one or one-on-one, it'd be interesting. I kind of feel like Becky should take the title, and that's not because she's like kind of like a superhero that always wins or anything like that. I just kind of buy her more that we need Rhea to go do a little bit more work with the rest of the women elsewhere on the card. And also, like, Becky's more believable, where you can kind of put someone against her where she could lose, she could win. There's a little bit of jeopardy there. And like, for me, it makes things a little bit more interesting, especially when you've got a couple of people coming up from NXT as well. So yeah, a little bit of a freshen up on WrestleMania, but I expect this is going to get like a decent wedge of time at WrestleMania, which would be the main thing. I think they'll have a great match. I've noticed Becky seems to have really slowed her pace down in the ring. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but if you watch her matches, so if you watch the one on Monday, where she was against Nia Jax. Yes, she's working Nia Jax, but everything she seems to do, she's very much slowed it down from what she was doing before. I don't know if that's on purpose, but it'd be interesting to see if they then speed things up at WrestleMania to make things like seem to pop a little bit more, and how Becky's sort of technical abilities mesh with Rhea's power more than anything as well. So can they put on a great match? We certainly saw Rhea versus Charlotte as possibly one of the matches of the year, not just women's matches, last year at WrestleMania. So really interested to see if these can kind of emulate that, or even maybe go beyond that, because that's what we want to see is, can they keep improving and keep pushing the envelope in terms of making women's matches bigger and better every year. So yeah, really just let me know, who do you think is going to win this one? Mark's saying that he can't see Becky winning, which ergo must mean Rhea's going to be winning. But where do we go from there, Mark? Who do you want to see Rhea fight if Becky is the one who does take the loss here? And what do we do next? That'll be my question for you moving forward. So let us move on. And I think the next one we've got is another WrestleMania trivia question. So I'm going to have to change the banner. And the next question I've got for you is, what is the shortest match? What is the shortest women's match we've ever had at WrestleMania? Because there's some absolutely shocking match lengths when I was going through them. And I think you'd be appalled to see how short a match is. Almost the point where you kind of can't believe that it's worth the hassle of getting people out there for this kind of length of match. I know we've had matches in the past, things like Sheamus versus Daniel Bryan, where it's over in seconds, but that was very much to do with the storyline of who Daniel Bryan was at that time, being kind of distracted by AJ at ringside as well, that sort of stuff. But this is more of just a case of like the women were like, yeah, go have your time out there and then come back. So let me know what you think the shortest match at WrestleMania ever is, because I mean, just know how many historians that are in tonight or watching this in the future, whether you would know the question to this. We are going to be talking about Iyo versus Bayley next, but I'll give you another few seconds to have a think about what the shortest women's match at WrestleMania has been, and then I'll reveal the answer to that one. Let me know as well, what are you up to this weekend? What are your plans while we're waiting for people to kind of come in? I'll be interested to see how many people are going to a wrestling show or watching elsewhere. But yeah, let me know your shout. Mark's got in there. He says a guess of Trish versus Tori. It's a bit before Trish and Tori's time, this one. There is a little bit of an asterisk, I guess, that has to go on this one, because the shortest match, and when I talk about the stats that I've got, I'm only going to be talking about the main WrestleMania matches, because I don't see the pre-show as part of the actual WrestleMania, because sometimes they were shown, sometimes they weren't. I think there was a couple of instances where the pre-show matches were on Heat before WrestleMania as well. So it's a bit all over the place. So for the purpose of keeping things nice and tidy, I did just keep it down to the main show of WrestleMania, because I believe if you were counting the fastest ever match, it was on a Heat before WrestleMania 15. It was Jacqueline versus Ivory was on Heat, and that lasted for 1 minute and 23 seconds. But if you are just going by the main roster, the main show of WrestleMania, the shortest ever match is Fabulous Moolah versus Velvet McIntyre at WrestleMania 2, which lasted for 2 seconds more at 1 minute and 25 seconds. As you say, I have a feeling, I don't know, I'd have to go back and watch that match, but I have a feeling that the entrances would last longer if they got entrances at all. 1 minute 25. I defy any wrestler to say that they could get a story or kind of tell something in the ring over 1 minute and 25, especially at WrestleMania, when obviously people are very excited to be there for the sort of main events and things like that. You don't really have much time to capture people's attention. 1 minute 25 is pretty shocking. And some of the other things I saw, you see there's a lot of tag team matches at WrestleMania history for the women. Some were even mixed tag team match challenges and things like that. So WrestleMania 6, for example, Dusty Rhodes had a match with Sapphire versus Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth in Toronto at WrestleMania 6. And that was the only match that featured any women. So yeah, very kind of curious tale there. Let's move on. Iyo Sky versus Bayley. And we've just got someone else who just joined us there. News now, Tammy Lynn, Ellen, hi all. how's it going? Good to have you in. Hope you're having a lovely Friday wherever you are in the world. Let me know. And yeah, we've been talking about women's wrestling at WrestleMania, and we've already discussed a little bit about the Becky Lynch versus Rhea Ripley match. So we're going to move on to a match which I did allude to earlier that I kind of think has been very under promoted, which is Iyo Sky versus Bayley. Of course, Bayley won the 2024 Royal Rumble. And she had a chance to pick, and in a great bit of TV, she picked to go against Iyo Sky. Now, obviously, they'd kind of, over the few weeks before her decision was made, they'd been having little bits and pieces backstage where Iyo and the rest of Damage Control were sort of laughing behind Bayley's back. And then on the night where she went to pick it, Iyo Sky had kind of teased that she was going to take out Bayley when she picked Rhea Ripley and drop her from Damage Control anyway. So the fact that a Royal Rumble winner hasn't really been on any of the promotions for WrestleMania is in itself a little bit disappointing. I don't think they would be able to get away with it if they weren't putting someone like Cody Rhodes on. So they should be kind of pushing as much as Bayley. I was surprised not to see either of these two at the Vegas press conference, or both of them. But we did see Bianca Belair, who I know has a TV show to push, but at the moment doesn't actually have a match. So very interesting that they wouldn't kind of put that faith in Bayley to have her on there instead, and went down the route of let's get Bianca out there, because at the time I would imagine it's because they wanted to push her show with Montez Ford that's come out. We get it on Disney Plus. I think it's on Hulu over in the States. So let me know, are you disappointed in the way that Bayley's been represented this year so far, in terms of like on the posters and in the videos? But I think this has been a great storyline, probably in terms of the matches we've got. I know that doesn't say a lot because we've only got 4 official ones, possibly 5 after tonight. But this is a storyline that's been bubbling away for a long time. This goes back to obviously the SummerSlam, all the way back when Brock Lesnar tipped over the ring over in Nashville a couple of years back, when Bayley brought in Iyo Sky and Dakota Kai. And since then, we've also seen Oscar join Damage Control, and we've also seen Kairi Sane as well. So, yeah, really interesting to see that after a couple of years, Bayley still really not receiving the respect she maybe deserves. I think this will be a great match, and I really hope it is, because Bayley deserves it more than anyone in the women's roster, in my opinion. I think she's been great. She's stepped into every single character and position that WWE's asked her to, whether it be a tag team match, or whether it be this kind of the Karen character that she had, or the hugger character that she had. Now she's kind of like in between, where she's getting a little bit more as well. It's very strange, as Mark said as well. I think it's kind of buried the title match not having one or both on the pre-show, on the pre-show. So yeah, really weird that we haven't had much of a chance to kind of like get our teeth into this on a bigger audience, because people might come and watch WrestleMania that are casuals because The Rock's on it. But if they're going to stay, this is the stuff that's going to make them stay. It's like, can we see a little bit more from Bayley and Iyo Sky and push them forward? I think this is probably likely to get lost a little bit in the shuffle, because it's not. I don't think it's going to open. I don't think it's going to close any nights. Whereas, obviously, The Rock and the Bloodline storyline with Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins has kind of tied things up a little bit in terms of who's doing the closing. Do you have both of the women's matches opening? I'm not too sure, because I feel like this is one where you want the crowd to be emotionally invested in seeing like Bayley's big moment at WrestleMania, because when you look back across the WrestleManias, Becky Lynch has had her big moments, Charlotte's had her big moments, and Sasha's had a lot of big matches as well. So of the 4 horsewomen from NXT, Bayley's probably the one, is the poor cousin, as it were. Like, you want to see her get a little bit more respect put on her name, because she's had multiple titles, whether it be tag team, NXT, SmackDown. I can't remember if she's had the Raw Women's Championship or not. But certainly here she has the chance to reclaim a world championship. So I really hope she gets that chance here. Obviously, the kind of storyline we're going with is that the odds are very stacked against her, because we saw last week, we thought Dakota Kai was on Bayley's side, or that's the way it was kind of portrayed, only for Dakota to kind of jump down off the ring and refuse to tag in, and then attack Bayley with the rest of Damage Control. So we've got Dakota, who now seems to be the mouthpiece. If you saw Monday Night Raw, Dakota seems to be doing a lot of the talking, which is probably a good because the Kabuki Warriors, or whatever you kind of want to call them these days, and Iyo can speak a little bit of English, but it's not their first language. Certainly, I can tell you that their English would be much better than my Japanese. But putting a mouthpiece on like Dakota Kai, who can do that work for them, not only gives them a mouthpiece, but also gives Dakota Kai a great spot as well. So I'm a big Dakota Kai fan. I think she's got a lot to give. And obviously with a knee injury, like she had, a very serious, I think it was ACL injury, she needs time to make sure she's back in the ring okay and kind of getting up to pace and speed. But having a front and center with Damage Control is a fantastic move. And as Mark says, it's safe to say the tag ending night 1 with Cody Rhodes ending night 2. It's very, very difficult to think anything else would happen there, because let's face it, The Rock's not coming back to not main event at least one of the nights, even though his presence will probably be felt across at least 2. So yeah, let me know, where do you think this match slots in onto the card? Because I can see the Becky Lynch versus Rhea Ripley match, if it stays like that, potentially opening night 1. We saw, if you think back to WrestleMania 35, we had a very hot start where it was Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar, and that kind of kicked off the night with a championship match. We could see that, but again, I think because of the representation, I'm hoping this gets at least 20 minutes. Let them kind of really tell their story out. But it'd be interesting how Bayley over the next few weeks, and even on WrestleMania itself, is going to be able to even the odds, because at the moment she's got effectively 4-on-1. So where do we see Bayley getting any kind of help from? She's burnt a lot of bridges while she was in Damage Control, but will someone like Charlotte come back and help her? Will we see Jade Cargill come and help her a little bit, even the odds out? Will we see a tag team who the Kabuki Warriors have been feuding with, even the odds a little bit? So there's a lot of questions as to how Bayley's going to pull this off. And going back to being like an underdog is something that I think suits her really well. But I expect the crowd to be heavily in her favour that night. Mark reckons potentially opens night 2 for this one, which wouldn't be a bad shout, to be honest. I could see that happening. So yeah, we're not going to be here too much longer. We're about to hit half an hour, but I've got a couple more things I've got for you in terms of some trivia for WrestleMania and women's matches at WrestleMania. So we went through the shortest match at WrestleMania. I'd love to know who you think has had the longest match for women's matches at WrestleMania. I'll give you a little bit of a clue. It has come within the last 5 WrestleManias. So within the last 5 WrestleManias, it was your answer. Who do you think has had the longest match ever at a WrestleMania? I was quite surprised by this, and there was a few where I was looking through like the times for it, thinking like, oh god, that's going to be the longest. So as you kind of go through from WrestleMania 1 to 39, you start seeing that like they have matches like 10 women tag team match, and then that's happened a couple of times purely just to get a load of the women's wrestlers onto WrestleMania's card. But seeing that, we also had the few years where there's battle royales and things to get like 20 women on. But yeah, what I'm looking for here is the answer to the longest women's wrestling match at WrestleMania history. Mark's opening gambit there. I do appreciate you being in today, Mark. It feels like it's been a little bit of a conversation between myself and you. The Triple Threat Women title, Lynch, Flair, Banks. So, of course, the one that you're talking about there, I've got the stats in front of me. I'm just trying to find how long that one was. It's not the answer I was looking for. You're not too far away. One of those people is involved. So yeah, you'd have to go back to where is it? WrestleMania 32, I believe, is the one you're talking about, which is 16 minutes and 3 seconds, which is the one in Arlington, Texas, I believe, where they were featured quite prominently. If you go back and watch the documentaries, they featured quite heavily in the promotions, where they were actually like the first time they'd been on the poster, and they were quite high up the card as well. But yeah, unfortunately, not Becky Lynch versus Charlotte Flair versus Charlotte Banks from WrestleMania 32. But one of those people is involved in the longest one ever. You don't actually have to go back too far. WrestleMania 39. So last year in LA, the longest match was set, and it was Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte, which came in at 23 minutes and 35 seconds. There was a point where I was a little bit worried because I had a feeling that back in WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, if you remember, Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey had a tag team match against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, and that was 20 minutes and 40 seconds, which kind of goes back to Triple H having a lot of sway when it comes to how long his WrestleMania matches are. So that was quite a long match at 20 minutes and 40 seconds, but thankfully that was surpassed a couple of times, I believe, but last year's certainly was the longest, which was Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte with 23 minutes and 35 seconds. Now, as you can probably imagine, when going through this, there was a couple of things. It was a little bit disappointing to see, which was I don't know if I like having myself like that. Like, there we go, that'll do. I like having the WrestleMania logo bigger than myself. There were a number of WrestleManias where there was absolutely no women's matches at all. Now, in fact, there was 11 WrestleManias that we've had so far with no women's representation in matches. Now, there has been occasions where there's been no matches, but we've had like managers out there, because back in the day, you'd have people like Miss Elizabeth would be there, or Sensational Sherry. But I'm talking about matches on the WrestleMania card. Now, unfortunately, 11, as I said, is the number there. And I can tell you that was WrestleManias 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 29. So obviously there's a substantial chunk there. You've got the earlier days where you did have a couple on the first two WrestleManias, but 3, 4, 5, 7, and then all the way 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then randomly 29. Now you might ask what happened at 29. Now 29, you'd have to go back to the sort of doldrums of the sort of Divas era, and AJ Lee did appear, but she was at the side, I believe, of Dolph Ziggler, along with Big E, was next to her there as well. So AJ Lee did appear. That was the only female representation during WrestleMania 29, which in the grand scheme of things, not that long ago. We're talking, 10, 11 years. AJ Lee then went on a bit of a sort of streak, because she then was in matches in 30 and 31. So yeah, very much a kind of case of they weren't really putting too much stock in it. There's also stuff when you go back now, it's very difficult to watch, where you go into WrestleMania, where we've got the likes of sort of, I think they're Playboy Bunny tag matches, or like these kind of like swimsuit matches, things like that, where they don't age very well. Playboy evening gown tag team match between Tori Wilson and Sable versus Miss Jackie and Stacy Keibler. And then there was Lumberjill matches, and then WrestleMania 24, you had Beth Phoenix and Melina versus Maria Kanellis and Ashley Massaro, and that was a Playboy Bunny Mania Lumberjill match. And then things got even worse at WrestleMania 25 when Santina Marella won the 25 women Miss WrestleMania Battle Royale, which was 7 minutes and 25 seconds. So it's been a very potted history when it comes to WrestleMania, and probably disappointingly, we've never actually seen 3 singles women's matches at any WrestleMania so far. So my question to you is, are we going to see 3 singles matches at WrestleMania 40? Now, obviously, we have the 2-night split at the moment, so there's plenty of scope to be able to do that. But are we seeing any kind of matches that stand out to you, or kind of any feuds that are going to lead that way? We've obviously got the women's tag team matches, which will no doubt be included somewhere along the line. But we've said in the last couple of weeks, would you like to see a mid-card women's title at the moment? Because the roster is starting to be stacked, and I don't think tag team wrestling is for everyone. I also think it takes people away from the scene for a little bit too long as well. So would you like to see something along the lines of an intercontinental belt? It doesn't have to be that particular belt. I saw a suggestion today on X where it was talking about a China battle royale to crown the first women's intercontinental champion, which I'm not against, especially not being named after China. But I'd also maybe like to see it have its own identity and not be beholden to something like the Intercontinental title or the US title or things like that. So it'd be interesting to see what you guys think. Do you think there should be a mid-card title for the women? And should it be unveiled at WrestleMania and maybe up for grabs for, I don't know, someone like a Liv Morgan to win? We've also seen the emergence of someone like Tiffany Stratton, who we'll talk a little bit more about in the future. I'm absolutely positive of it. There's a lot of women at the moment who are quickly going to be looking for something, and there's only 2 main titles they can have at the moment. So, will we see anyone kind of push for that? But that's all we're going to be talking about. I'm really glad if you're watching this in the future. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you're in right now, like Mark is, really appreciate you being here and spending your Friday evening, afternoon, early hours of the morning if you're somewhere else with myself. Please go check out the rest of the content that we've got across, not only just on Wrestling Royalty, but also on Gimme a Ho Yeah. As I say, Ant's been covering the Eve promotion. I believe he might still be live across there. So go catch it with Ant as well. But make sure you check out all the new 2K24 stuff he's doing as well, because that's all fascinating stuff. If you want to get to know a little bit more about the new game that's just been released officially today, and some people might have got it a bit early if they pre-ordered it, but it came out today. If you're enjoying that, let us know. But Ant's got you covered in terms of a little bit of gameplay from that on the channel as well. And then you've also got a lot of content out on WrestleSphere. I put out a feature earlier in the week covering Paul Heyman, a long-form feature on Paul Heyman and his journey to the Hall of Fame, and why I think it's very overdue, but very happy for him to be going in. We've also seen a couple of other announcements that has happened today as well. So it's great to see that the Hall of Fame is finally starting to pick up a little bit. The US Express was obviously mentioned earlier today, and I don't know if anyone's seen it, but there was a great video that Triple H put out where he was calling as well to those guys, and he was having a bit of a chat about their induction and asking them if they, to come into the to it. And I think it's gonna be very emotional because obviously both those guys are related to the late Bray Wyatt as well. So it'd be really interesting to see how we're going to do that. But yeah, I'm interested also. Do you reckon they'll put Bray Wyatt in this year? Because we are, I don't know. It feels like we're far enough down the line in terms of a few months away that it's not absolutely raw. It will still be raw for those guys. You could see exactly how emotional both the guys were to be asked to go in to the WWE Hall of Fame. But it's it's going to be an interesting one for anyone else who's going in as well, because Paul Heyman's going to get a lot of time, you'd imagine, to do his speech. You're then going to have those guys as well, and then you got Bull Nakano as well, who's a pioneer in women's wrestling, who we're going in. And this is, as has been made aware by a lot of other media, wrestling media, this is the first one that Paul Levesque, Triple H, has put together. So this is very much the people that he believes should be in. And as Mark points out, Paul Heyman would have got in earlier, but he kept saying no. And apparently the reason is, I think, the pull of being in Philadelphia, the idea that this is very much an honor that Paul Levesque has asked him to come in this year on his opening sort of like Hall of Fame gambit, now that he's taken over the reins of that. So yeah, big honor. Be really interested to see over the next kind of couple of weeks who else joins. We'll probably get someone, I'd imagine, from the Attitude Era that will join in there. I'd like to see another ECW original go in. I know there's not too many that are on absolutely stunning terms with the company, but there's certainly a couple that you'd like to see represented in there. Maybe someone like a Raven or a Sandman go in, which would be an interesting speech as well. But with the fact that those three different superstars, tag teams, whatever you want to kind of call them, are in, it's going to be a good one this year. So definitely one to keep an eye on. I'll be there as well. I'll be at WrestleMania this year over in Philly. I'll also be at SmackDown and NXT Stand and Deliver, and of course Hall of Fame's following SmackDown. So make sure you stay tuned, hit the subscribe button. You'll hear all about the plans of the content that we'll be bringing out around WrestleMania, and let us know if there's anything you'd like us to see for you, or make sure we take a note of. But I'm going to wrap things up. But I really want to say thank you very much for joining me, and we'll be back again next week. I'll keep you on your toes. We'll put something out on Twitter or X, whatever you want to kind of call it, in terms of what we'll be covering. But I think we'll have Sam back next week, and we'll be able to have a little bit more of a listening to a chat rather than just me speaking a bit of a monologue, I guess. But appreciate you being here tonight. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the wrestling. I hope you enjoy SmackDown tonight, where The Rock is going to be face to face with Cody. Or Diary of Dwayne versus Cody Crybabies, as it's been dubbed a little bit as well. But I hope you enjoy it, regardless of the silly nicknames. Anyway, I've been Andy. This has been Wrestling Royalty. Thank you very much.